My name is Margaret. I am 82 years old, and I spend my final days confined to a wheelchair. The story I am about to tell is a horrifying secret that I will carry with me to my grave. Everything started 30 years ago. After my husband passed away, I lived a lonely life in a house in the suburbs of Columbus. My son, Ryan, had moved away a long time ago to pursue his career and rarely came to visit. Then, Daniel appeared. He was 20 years younger than me, but he was the most mature and sincere man I had ever met. After we had been together for nearly 10 years, I decided to add Daniel's name to my will. I felt that he deserved to be taken care of after I was gone. When Ryan found out, he was furious. He screamed at me, saying I was being used by a gold digger and that I was blinded by my feelings. Even though it broke my heart, I didn't change my mind. Ryan cut off all contact with me after that. Then came a fateful afternoon. I was upstairs when I heard Daniel cry out in pain from the living room. When I got downstairs, I saw the front door standing slightly open. A man wearing a white lab coat was walking out. I only managed to see his back as he left. Daniel was curled up on the sofa, his face pale, clutching his shoulder in pain. Daniel told me that the man was a worker from a community vaccination program who had come to give him a booster flu shot. I wondered why a flu shot would cause so much pain. Daniel said the worker explained that this specific shot would hurt more than usual and that it was just a side effect. Daniel refused my offer to go to the hospital. He thought he would be fine after resting for a bit. That night, he didn't come upstairs to bed. Instead, he stayed on the sofa. The next morning when I went downstairs, Daniel was cold. His left arm had swollen up like a water balloon. The skin around the injection site had turned a rotting black color, and a dark brown fluid with a metallic smell was leaking out of it. I was in total shock. I could only scream and cry out his name. The police arrived, but they couldn't find any clear leads. This was back before everyone had security cameras. No neighbors had seen the man, and there were no records of any vaccination programs in the area that day. The final report stated that Daniel died from a rare allergic reaction to a vaccine. I didn't believe it, but I felt helpless. There was nothing I could do. After the shock of his death, I was so devastated that I became bedridden. Right at my lowest point, Ryan suddenly returned. He didn't say a word about our past arguments. He just quietly took care of me, bringing me tea, water, and medicine with great care. In my loneliness and grief, I thought, at least I still have my son. 5 years later, I asked my lawyer to change my will, removing Daniel's name and leaving everything to Ryan. One evening, while I was resting, Ryan walked into my room. Thinking I was fast asleep from my medication, he sat down next to my bed and stroked the new will. He whispered in a low, heavy voice, "It should have been this way from the very beginning, Mom." I was confused by his words and his dark tone. Right at that moment, a detail I had overlooked suddenly flashed in my mind. The build of the man in the white lab coat, the one I saw leaving the day Daniel was injected, looked exactly like Ryan. Everything started to become clear. There was no medical worker. The person who came to the house to give Daniel that shot was Ryan. I lay there, my heart racing, but I had to pretend I was in a deep sleep. Pure terror choked me. My son didn't come back to take care of me. He came back to harvest the results of a crime he had patiently committed. Since that night, I have fallen into a state of mental collapse. I can hardly eat or sleep, and I have become very quiet. Ryan continues to care for me as if nothing happened. Every move he makes is normal, even thoughtful. But every time I look at him, I see the image of Daniel lying dead on the sofa that day. I can only remain silent and live with the truth I have discovered. The truth is that Ryan killed Daniel to take all the money for himself. My son is a murderer. My name is Oscar. When this story happened, I was in the 4th grade, living with my family in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Pennsylvania. It was so peaceful at night that you could hear every single cricket chirping outside. Not far from our neighborhood, tucked away in a dense forest, there sat an abandoned house. No one knew when it was built or how long it had been left to rot. Like any group of kids, we were fascinated by it and spent our time swapping ghost stories about the place. Some kids said they saw dim lights flickering inside at night. Others claimed they heard strange noises echoing from deep within the woods. Right before summer break that year, I teamed up with my two friends, Marcus and Michael. We decided to go on an expedition to the abandoned house. We wanted to see it with our own eyes and figure out if the rumors were actually true. We chose to go in the afternoon. The path into the woods wasn't clear, and as we went deeper, the trees got thicker and the atmosphere felt heavy. After hiking for about 20 minutes, the house finally appeared. Our first impression wasn't the typical ruin you'd expect. The house looked sturdy and surprisingly clean, as if time hadn't touched it at all. We crept closer to listen, but no sound came from inside. The front door pushed open without any effort. The inside was just as clean, but we immediately noticed a strange smell. It smelled like harsh chemicals, exactly like the scent of the dentist's offices we hated going to. We walked into a large room next to the living area. The space looked just like a medical laboratory. There were tons of medical tools, scalpels, clamps, scissors, and test tubes, neatly organized on metal tables. Shelves filled with books lined the walls. Marcus curiously pulled a book down to look at it, but he suddenly let out a scream that sent a chill down our spines. On the page he had opened, there was a graphic photo of a human body with all of its skin peeled off. Marcus begged us to leave right then, but Michael and I refused. We teased him for being a chicken over a simple picture. At the time, we just told ourselves that an eccentric doctor or medical researcher probably lived there. After we finished exploring the first floor, we noticed there were no stairs leading up. The way up had been torn down and sealed off with a heavy sheet of iron. We decided to head outside and climb the water pipes that ran up the side of the house to reach the second floor. The second floor windows were completely covered with layers of old newspapers and magazines. We peeled back a small section just big enough for us to crawl through. The air inside was suffocating. That chemical smell from downstairs was much stronger and more disgusting up here. Our flashlights swept across the hallway, which was covered in posters of models in swimsuits. But when we looked closer, our hearts dropped. Every single face in the photos had been cut out and replaced with a picture of a flayed, skinless face. Terrified, we moved quickly down the hall and into a bedroom. We all froze at the doorway. Rows of mannequins wearing underwear were standing side by side. They were all facing the door, looking like they were waiting to judge whoever walked in. For some reason, we felt more curious than scared at that moment, except for Marcus, who was still trembling, so we walked further inside. In the corner of the room, Michael found an old TV hooked up to a car battery. He turned it on, and the screen filled with static. Suddenly, a VHS player underneath started spinning on its own, as if it had been programmed to play. The image on the screen showed a room with a woman tied tightly to a chair. She was struggling frantically, and her mouth was taped shut. A man wearing medical scrubs and a surgical mask stepped into the frame. He was holding a sharp knife. The man leaned down and gripped the skin on the woman's face. Then, he pressed the blade against her forehead and began to make a long, deep cut downward. Blood immediately sprayed out, running down her face and neck. The woman struggled even harder, but he didn't stop. He grabbed the edge of the skin he had just cut and slowly began to peel it away from her face. We stared at each other, gasping for air for a split second, before we turned and bolted in total blind panic. We didn't stop running until we saw the familiar sights of our town. Marcus broke down in tears, completely unable to calm himself. We told the adults immediately, and the police were at the house in no time. Everything we learned after that came from eavesdropping on the grown-ups. Inside the house, police found evidence that many people had been murdered there over a long period of time. However, there were no clear clues pointing to the identity of the killer. No official explanation was ever fully released to the public. After that day, we were strictly forbidden from hanging out after 6 p.m. The house in the woods was cordoned off and eventually torn down to the ground. Even though nearly 20 years have passed, the memory of that house is still fresh in my mind. My friends and I still talk about it sometimes when we get together. We always wonder if the killer and the man in that horrifying video were the same person.
My name is Danny. The memory I'm about to share has haunted me for 7 years, from the time I was 15 until now. Everything started around 2019 in the quiet suburban neighborhood where my family lived. Right across the street from us was an old house where a mother and son lived. They always kept their curtains tightly closed. The mother was in her 70s, but still very sharp, while her son was a total burden, both physically and mentally. I can't remember his real name, so in my mind, my friends and I just called him Creeper Joe. Joe was in his 30s. He was a big, strong guy, but he chose to live off his elderly mother. His appearance made you think of a villain in a horror movie. He was obese, pale, had messy hair, and always smelled bad. Joe didn't have a job or any friends. It seemed like his entire world existed within the four walls of his bedroom. Sometimes I'd run into him when I went out to get the mail. He would try to start conversations with me about metal music, probably because he heard it playing from my bedroom window. At the time, I just thought he was a lonely, weird guy, but harmless. I stayed polite and talked back until my dad stepped in. My dad usually hung out in the garage fixing cars or having a beer. One afternoon he called me over, his face stern and full of warning. "Stay away from that Joe guy, Danny. I've seen him standing behind his curtains watching the neighborhood kids, especially little Isaac across the street." My dad's words sent a chill down my spine. Thinking about a guy like Joe watching 13 or 14-year-old kids felt incredibly dirty. A few months later, my dad walked into the house looking extremely disturbed. He told us that Joe had just casually and shamelessly admitted to him that he liked young boys. I can't even describe how shocked my family was. My dad immediately called the police. They showed up minutes later and spent a long time inside Joe's house. I watched as the officers hauled out his desktop computer and a bunch of other electronics. The results of the investigation rocked the whole neighborhood. His computer was filled with illegal content and hundreds of secret photos of local boys, including me. Joe disappeared after that. I wasn't sure if he was on probation or in jail for a while, but for months, his mailbox overflowed because no one bothered to check it. When Joe finally showed up again, his attitude had completely changed. He didn't try to talk to me anymore. Instead, he avoided me. He would hide behind his door and wait for me to finish getting the mail before he stepped outside. I didn't care. I just acted like that disgusting neighbor didn't exist. However, the breaking point of the story happened about a month after he returned. Late one night, the sound of sirens tore through the silence of the neighborhood. An ambulance pulled up right in front of Joe's house. At first, I thought his mother was having a health emergency, but the truth was much worse. Creeper Joe was dead. The craziest thing I heard from the paramedics and the police on the scene was that his mother only found out he was dead after 3 days. Joe spent so much time locked in his room that she never suspected a thing. I can't even imagine how foul the scene inside that room must have been. But after Joe's death, some very strange details started to come out. The neighbors started whispering that shortly before he died, the mother had secretly taken out a massive life insurance policy on Joe. This made no sense because Joe was unemployed, had no income, no assets, and wasn't providing for her at all. In fact, the 70-year-old mother was the one supporting and serving him. After the insurance money paid out, she became very wealthy. She renovated her entire house and lived a very comfortable life from then on. Although the autopsy report said Joe died of a sudden heart attack, which made sense given his lazy lifestyle and terrible diet, my family and the neighbors still have a huge lingering question. Was it really just a coincidence that a predatory son died right after the insurance policy was signed? Or did a mother, out of desperation and exhaustion, find a way to clean up her burden while securing a rich retirement for herself? The truth probably went into the grave with Joe, but that creepy feeling every time I look at that house across the street is still there.
I accidentally became an accomplice to a murderer. I'm Ryan, 25, and I live by myself in a cheap apartment in Boston. I didn't go to college. I moved out, got a job, and have been living on my own since I was 18. My family's not rich, so I just didn't want my parents to stress out over me. Even though I still live in the same city, I only visit home occasionally because I'm pretty busy. I used to work a bunch of different jobs before taking a short course in editing and filmmaking. It was my dream since high school, but I ended up giving it up. I was set on becoming a professional cameraman. I bought an expensive camera on installments and started posting my info and work on job sites. I didn't care about the salary. If someone reached out, I'd take the job to improve my skills. After almost a week of posting in all 15 groups, I didn't get any comments, messages, or calls. But I didn't give up. I kept looking for opportunities. And then I came across an article. They didn't require experience in filming, just that you be flexible with your time. And the pay was really generous. It felt like I'd just found the light switch in a dark room. Without hesitation, I texted the account that posted the job ad right away. My message was read within a second. But instead of responding to my greeting and introduction, that person went straight to the request. The visual needs to be sharp, especially at the climax. I thought he might be a guy who creates content for various platforms. This job was trendy at that time and wasn't too hard to do. Maybe he has an idea and needs someone to collaborate with. What kind of content are you working on? Can you do night shoots? Sure, if the content needs it. Can I see the script? I want to prepare as best as I can. 12 a.m., Friday. Last train at Park Street subway station. The conversation didn't seem to flow together. That was the last message he sent, and he wasn't online or active on his personal account after that. Looks like this wasn't even the main account. 3 days later, I was still unsure if the appointment was actually going to happen. On Friday, I kept my eyes glued to my phone. I was really looking forward to this job since I needed the money. Around 10:30 p.m., I fell asleep on the sofa, and when the phone rang, it made me jump like a spring. Are you ready? My sleepy brain was trying to wake up and figure out what was going on. Red jacket, baggy pants, and black shoes. Look for me with this description. I still don't know your name. There was a long beep on the phone before I could finish my sentence. I quickly grabbed my stuff and headed to the meeting place. 11:30 p.m., I got to the subway station. It wasn't too crowded, but it wasn't empty either. It was mostly young people like me. Some were there for dates, some were rushing home, and some just wanted a spot to check their phones. I brought my camera, walked around slowly, and didn't see anyone matching the description the guy gave. After circling around and coming back to where I started, a bright red jacket caught my eye. Baggy pants and black shoes. It had to be him. I approached and he was wearing a huge hat that covered most of his face, plus a black mask. Maybe he didn't want to show his face in the video. I greeted him, but he just kept staring at his wristwatch. Can I get your name so I know how to address you? Get the camera ready and set up in that position. I didn't say anything more and quickly set up the camera. As I looked at him, it hit me that I might be getting caught up in some weird young adult nonsense. He kept checking his watch every 10 seconds, like he was waiting for some important moment. After almost 30 minutes like this, I had no idea what the heck I was doing there anymore. I walked up to him and said, "I need to know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing here." He kept looking at his watch, then stood up and cut me off as he did. "Get to your position and start filming when I give the signal." He quickly headed towards the train tracks. I went back to where I had set up my camera, adjusted the angle a bit, and kept an eye on his every move. He walked while checking his watch and stopped right at the edge of the tracks. He turned towards me, raised his hand to signal, and I pressed the button. That's when my job officially began. The train was coming from behind him with its siren blaring. At that moment, I thought to myself that this dude had some guts. I kept adjusting the angle and making sure it looked right. But then, he turned around and pushed the woman standing next to him. She fell towards the oncoming train, and then dark red blood mixed with pieces of flesh, a strong fishy smell, and screams. The scene was like a horror movie mixed with chaos, almost like something out of a mental hospital. I was frozen, and a few people ran into me in the camera. That guy had disappeared, and I realized I was involved with him. I was helping a murderer. Just like everyone else, I panicked and ran, leaving the camera behind. I sat in my room trembling non-stop as that scene played in my mind over and over again. The next few days I just hid in my house, feeling like a disgusting death row inmate. I was certain the police would show up any minute. My camera was left behind, with my fingerprints on it, and it had recorded everything clearly. There were moments when I thought about calling the police, confessing everything, and claiming I had nothing to do with the murderer. But who would believe me? A week passed and nothing happened. I kept up with all the news. The police were still investigating the case, but there was no mention of the camera. Living in constant anxiety left my nerves and body completely drained. This morning, 13 days after that horrible night, I got a package. It was pretty heavy, with my information on it, but no sender details. I opened it up, and it was my camera. There were a few scratches, but it was still in pretty good shape. There was a very thick white envelope inside, packed with cash, a total of $3,000. "You did a great job. The video quality is very clear. Here's your payment. I'll need you for upcoming projects." Looking at the old, crumpled bills, I wondered if I had become his accomplice. I need to move, now, but I have to report this to the police. I can't let these dirty, scary things mess up my future.
My name is Bill. In May 2020, I worked the graveyard shift at a convenience store in a rough neighborhood in Oregon. During the day, the area looked normal enough, but after midnight, things got chaotic. Street gangs and groups of rowdy kids usually hung out around there at night. Fights, shoplifting, and even run-ins involving knives or guns were just part of the daily routine. The biggest problem wasn't even the criminals. It was my boss. He was incredibly cowardly and terrified of legal trouble. The store had one unbreakable rule: never call the police. He believed that the cops showing up only led to investigations, bad press, and headaches that would ruin the store's reputation. Because of this, we just had to take the abuse from the local punks. Once, a group came in at midnight, made a huge scene, and suddenly dumped a cup of hot coffee over my head. I had to stay calm and just take it so things wouldn't escalate. My coworker on that shift was Daniel, a shy college student. Daniel had it even worse than me. One time, a group of guys bullied him right inside the store. They forced him to take off his pants and kneel down to apologize just for their own sick entertainment. Right at his most humiliating moment, Ryan walked in. Ryan was a tall, fit man, and as soon as the punks saw him in his police uniform, they backed off immediately. Ryan stepped in and cleared them out. Thanks to him, Daniel escaped that horrible situation. From that day on, Ryan became a hero in Daniel's eyes. Ryan patrolled the neighborhood often and would stop by our store to talk for a long time. He told us he was following in the footsteps of his late father, who had been a brave cop. Ryan confessed that he had failed the police entrance exam many times, but his hunger for justice kept him going. After years of trying, he said he finally earned his uniform. His story of perseverance inspired me, a dead-end night shift worker, and I truly admired him. Life went on like that until the night I went out to take out the trash. While I was gathering bags behind the store, I found something heavy tucked between the black trash bags. It was a handgun that looked exactly like a revolver. It was cold and heavy. I couldn't tell if it was a real gun or a high-quality model gun. I hesitated, but curiosity won out, and I decided to keep it to get a better look. I brought it inside and showed Daniel. He was curious too. After looking it over, he said it was best to hide it for safety. Daniel took the gun to the back break room and put it in a desk drawer. I stood behind the counter, but I couldn't stop thinking about that gun. I decided to go into the break room and check the security footage to see who had dumped it. I was stunned. On the screen, the person nervously tossing the gun into the trash with a panicked look on his face was none other than Ryan, our store's hero. The footage showed him in a heated scuffle with a group of thugs. Ryan had the gun in his hand, but the strange thing was that the thugs weren't afraid at all. They outnumbered him and easily overpowered him. While cornered, Ryan threw the gun into the trash and ran away, only to be dragged off screen by a guy in a black hoodie. I was completely confused. I went straight back to the drawer where Daniel had put the gun. It was gone. I asked Daniel about it, but he insisted he didn't take it and had no idea where it went. The whole thing remained a mystery to me for several days. A few days later, a group of young guys stormed into the store. They started searching everywhere and arguing loudly outside the door, saying they were looking for something someone hid. When I stepped out to tell them to quiet down, one of the guys, who had a murderous look in his eyes, suddenly smashed a metal ashtray into the back of my head. Pain exploded, and I felt warm blood running down my face. All the patience and anger I had bottled up for years finally snapped. I lost control. Ignoring my injury, I fought back like a madman. My sudden aggression terrified the group. They backed off, and the real police arrived a moment later because Daniel had called them. They were arrested for disturbing the peace and assault. I was taken to the hospital with a minor skull fracture. While I was in the hospital, I asked the officer in charge about Ryan. The officer looked surprised. He told me there was no cop named Ryan working in that entire district. That was when the truth finally came out. Ryan wasn't a cop. It was true that he had failed the exam many times. He was just a regular civilian, but his obsession with wearing the uniform was so strong that he bought a fake police outfit online to cosplay and patrol the streets, trying to dish out his own brand of justice. Those street punks, who were in and out of jail all the time, had realized Ryan was a fake long ago. They knew he only carried a realistic model gun, and they wanted to steal it to use in a real crime. Cornered, Ryan had tossed the gun into our trash so it wouldn't fall into their hands. Throughout my hospital stay, Ryan's story haunted me. He had lied, but it was a lie that was hard to hate. After I was discharged, I went back to the store, but my cowardly boss fired me immediately. He said I caused too much trouble and hurt the store's reputation. Before leaving, I went to the break room to return my uniform. I opened Daniel's locker, intending to leave my favorite hat as a secret gift for him, and I found the model gun hidden inside. I froze, and then I understood everything. Daniel must have watched the camera footage before I did. He realized Ryan was a fake cop. But because he wanted to protect the dignity of the hero who had saved him from humiliation, he secretly took the gun and lied to me. Daniel wanted to keep the image of his hero alive. Understanding Daniel's heart, I pretended I didn't see a thing and closed the locker. A few days later, a report popped up on the local news. A security guard named Ryan had been brutally beaten by a group of young men during the night and was in critical condition. Those men were the same thugs who had caused trouble at our store. I went cold after hearing the news. The man who put on a fake uniform just to follow his dream of protecting others ended up meeting a truly cruel fate.
I sold the haunted house and made a pretty sweet commission. I'm Kane. I'm 35 and work at an auto shop in downtown Dallas, Texas. I work in sales, so I need to be good at talking to people and understanding what makes them tick. But I messed up by letting money get in the way of my professional ethics. That whole thing destroyed the shop's reputation, and yeah, I ended up getting fired. At the time, I didn't really grasp how serious the consequences were. I was so optimistic that I thought if I didn't work at this shop, there'd be tons of other places lining up to hire me with a big salary. After all, I was a great employee, but the whole auto industry turned me down when they saw my resume. My longtime girlfriend also left me. She was fed up with my indifference and decided to kick me out. None of my friends wanted to help, so in a pretty low state, I just wandered around the park. In my lowest moment, I spotted a job ad from a real estate company posted on a tree. Without a second thought, I grabbed that notice like it was a lifeline. Just 40 minutes later, I was at their office. It turned out to be a small office run by a 65-year-old guy named Beavis. Mr. Beavis had some real estate, like houses and small plots of land, that he wanted to sell to fund his retirement. Beavis didn't ask me any questions about experience or skills. He handed me a contract and said that if I could sell the house listed on it, I'd get a $500,000 commission. Over the past 3 years, a lot of people have tried to sign the contract, but no one's actually sold the house. I was surprised, excited, and a bit skeptical, so I asked again to make sure about the commission I'd get. After getting a solid confirmation from Beavis, I signed the contract right away. I drove to the house, full of enthusiasm and determination, even though it was pretty far from the city center. The house wasn't new and wasn't too big, but it was comfortable enough. I stopped in the biggest bedroom next to the living room, lay down on the bed, and finally felt my tired body relax after being on edge for days. I woke up suddenly, looked around the dark room all groggy, checked my phone, and realized it was almost 7 p.m. I'd actually had a really good nap. When it was time to leave, I stood up and was shocked to see a dark figure standing at the door, just staring at me. I must have been still groggy from just waking up. I went to turn on the light, looked around, and noticed that the wardrobe door was slightly open. I walked over, shut the cupboard door, and was surprised to find an old kitchen knife inside. I picked up the knife and walked to the kitchen and put it back in its place. As I looked around, an idea suddenly popped into my head. "Good evening, Mr. Beavis. This house is wonderful. I wanted to ask if I could stay here until the house is sold."
"Yeah, no problem. Just make sure everything stays in good shape."
I hung up the phone and jumped for joy. My housing problem was sorted out for now. As soon as I turned to look at the living room, a dark figure suddenly vanished behind the TV shelf. I stopped. This time I wasn't imagining things, so I slowly walked over to the TV. But then I heard a noise from the kitchen again, so I quickly turned around. The kitchen knife I saw earlier had just magically fallen out of the knife holder. I picked up the knife, took a good look at it, and then shrugged it off. It wasn't anything serious. This was the only place I had at the moment, so choosing to stay happy and optimistic seemed like the best option. I put the knife back where it belonged and ordered some dinner. After eating, I took a shower, changed into comfy clothes, and started posting the house for sale. Over 20 minutes after I posted the house info on my personal page, I got a few comments asking for more details. I jumped out of bed, stood in front of the mirror, and practiced my pitch for the house. Suddenly, I heard a creaking sound that wouldn't stop I turned around and was surprised to see the wardrobe door open again. There must be a problem with the hinge, so I used a rope to tie the wardrobe door shut and went back to bed. By this point, my post had a few more comments and a handful of people were showing interest in the house. But there was one account that claimed to be a local resident commented, "This house is haunted." After reading the comment, I quickly deleted it and blocked the account. Thinking about all the strange stuff that's happened since I got here gave me chills. But I didn't let it bother me for long. My work was going great, and I figured I'd sell the house quickly and be out of here. I browsed the web for a bit longer and then went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of a blaring alarm clock. I was grimacing from not getting enough sleep, fumbling around to find my phone and turn off the alarm. A cut running down the middle of my palm gave me a sharp pain and woke me up. I sat up, looked at my hand bleeding, and started to panic. Then I looked around and noticed the kitchen knife had been on the bed for a while. The blood kept flowing, so I had to take care of the wound right away. As soon as I opened the door, I was shocked to see the TV shelf and the sofa blocking the exit. I used all my strength to push the shelf, but the wound on my hand reopened, and I screamed in pain. Finally, I managed to squeeze through a small gap. I quickly ran to the kitchen to grab the medical kit and bandage the wound, then breathed in exhaustion. I looked around the house and noticed nothing valuable was missing, and the door was still locked. What the heck just happened? Could it be that this house is actually haunted? The phone rang again, and it was an unknown number that seemed to be coming from a landline. I answered the phone, feeling pretty down.
"Get out of here."
A woman's voice came through cold and angry. I got chills from that, so I hung up right away. I tried to calm down and then headed to the living room. I froze when I saw that the landline phone wasn't in its usual place, like someone had just used it. Feeling suspicious, I dialed my own mobile number, and it showed up on the landline's call list. At that moment, I was on high alert and in full defense mode. I checked all the locks and looked around the house, but everything seemed normal. Feeling suspicious and scared, I went up to the second floor of the house. As soon as I reached the top of the stairs, I felt like I should look to the left down the hallway. Right away, a dark shadow darted into a nearby room. I screamed out loud by reflex, my heart pounding in my chest. I approached the door slowly, took a deep breath, grabbed the doorknob, and turned it hard, but the door was locked from the inside. I shook the handle hard and shouted loudly, and suddenly the room was filled with the sound of a baby crying. Just a few seconds later, the crying suddenly stopped. Not a ghost, must be a person, I whispered to myself, wanting to open the door and see what was inside. I ran downstairs to grab the spare key, but when I got back, the door was ajar. I ran inside and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Hearing the noises from above, an idea popped in my mind. I said to myself, "It's coming from the attic." Instead of checking the attic, I went downstairs, locked all the doors and windows from the outside, and then called the police. 10 minutes later, the police showed up. After checking the whole house, they uncovered the truth, and it shocked both Beavis and me. In the attic of the house, there was a woman named Laura and her 6-year-old child. They were homeless and had been living in the house for the past few years. All the creepy stuff was set up by them to spread rumors about hauntings so Beavis couldn't sell the house. Laura and her child looked pretty rough, with skinny bodies and pale skin. Beavis didn't report them to the police. Instead, Laura and her child were introduced to a federal program for the homeless and got a fresh start. I managed to sell the house and felt like this job was meant for me, so I decided to stick with it and develop my skills. I definitely won't make the same big mistake again. I was checking out my wife Chasey's creepy web browser history. I'm Ted, and I'm 35. I'm going through some really tough days, feeling trapped in my marriage. My wife, Chasey, is 4 years younger than me. We've been married for almost 5 years and have a sweet baby boy. I'm always telling my friends and coworkers how I have a happy family. My wife and I both have good jobs and incomes, and we can easily afford all the conveniences that make our lives comfortable. Then one day, my world came crashing down. It was a weekend morning, and Chasey had plans to go out and meet her friends. My wife has a group of 4 close friends, and they're all beautiful and successful women. Chasey is really thoughtful. She brought our son with her so I could have some peace and quiet to rest. I woke up at 9 a.m., went downstairs, and found that my wife had left breakfast ready for me before heading out, along with a note. I love Chasey for little things like that. While I was having breakfast, I checked a bit of work. I noticed an email from a client that I hadn't dealt with yet. Unfortunately, my computer was acting up at the time, and I needed to respond to the client quickly. I ran upstairs to use Chasey's computer. The password was definitely our wedding anniversary. When I opened the web browser, I was a bit shocked to see so many search tabs that Chasey had left open. I chuckled a bit. Seems like any woman using a phone or laptop would have a similar setup to my wife's. But that smile quickly faded when I started reading through it. What are the divorce procedures? It took me a few minutes just to carefully read that short line, and all I felt at that moment was anxiety. Check the date of that search. It was from a month ago. But even after a month, everything in my family seems normal. I kept looking through the other search tabs and proof of separate property when divorcing, conditions for child custody, what should I do when my husband cheats, how to hurt a traitor. The more I read, the more scared and panicked I felt. I couldn't stop thinking about Chasey's thoughts and intentions while she was typing these search lines, all while seeming so happy in front of me. Why could this be happening? There were many other searches from Chasey that reminded me of those creepy anatomy scenes in horror movies. My body was cold, but I was sweating heavily and my heart was racing. I need to let Katie, one of Chasey's close friends, know about this. The phone is ringing, but why isn't she answering? Ted, honey, I'm home. Chasey's call made me jump like a coiled spring. Chasey's laptop hit the floor with a loud bang. I had never been so scared of my wife. I quickly picked up the laptop, tried to remember where I had found it, set it down, and answered Chasey. You are home? I had just walked out of the bedroom when Chasey arrived at the same time. Facing my wife, I was tense and anxious, even though she greeted me with her familiar smile. Where's our son? I left him with Naomi. He's going to the amusement park with her daughter. I smiled and nodded, trying to figure out what to say next. Guess who's coming to visit us today? In front of me, Chasey pulled Katie's hand closer. I felt dizzy all of a sudden. Chasey flashed a bright smile, looking at me and then at Katie. I could tell how tense Katie was. She looked at me with a pleading expression. I looked at Katie with a face full of questions and helplessness. What's wrong with you? Chasey's voice snapped Katie and me back to reality. I gave a stiff smile and greeted Katie. Chasey led Katie to the living room and asked me to get some water for the guests. I brought 2 glasses of orange juice and set them on the table. Katie is really attractive, isn't she? Chasey's question startled me, and I ended up spilling the orange juice on Katie. The scene was pretty chaotic. Chasey scolded me a few times before taking Katie into our bedroom to change. The sound of the door locking made me jump. I glanced toward the bedroom while trying to clean up the orange juice. More than 30 minutes passed, and I was sitting on pins and needles in the living room, my eyes fixed on the bedroom door. I went to knock on the door, but thinking about Chasey's expression made me too scared to do it. It felt like the spacious living room was running out of oxygen for me to breathe. Suddenly, a loud scream filled with pain and panic came from inside. I couldn't tell if it was Chasey or Katie screaming. "Chasey, honey, is everything okay?" I was met with a satisfied laugh, which I thought might be Chasey's, but I couldn't be sure. I shouted for Chasey to open the door. I kept banging on the door, trying to get a reaction from whoever was inside. A moment later, the door opened. I was about to rush in, but Chasey stopped me, still smiling brightly. Her body was covered in red spots from head to toe. The white dress she was wearing made the red spots stand out even more. I trembled and tried to move closer, but Chasey immediately shot me a cold, stern look. She threw the divorce papers and a bunch of evidence of my affair with Katie right in my face. Katie was a close friend of 15 years, whom Chasey always considered like family. Katie and I have been together for 4 years now. I know a lot of people will judge me when I say that. Chasey left without saying any words. I rushed into the room to find Katie, who was huddled in the corner shaking. Next to her was a pair of scissors lying in a pool of red liquid. Katie rushed to hug me and cried, but she was completely fine and healthy. "Ted, she meant to hurt me, but then she ended up hurting herself." Pushed Katie away and ran after my wife, who had been taken to the hospital by the neighbors. Chasey was diagnosed with severe mass depression. The illness began after Chasey gave birth, and her son is now 5 years old. She filed for divorce and sued me after her treatment. Watching my wife and son leave, I felt overwhelming regret. I had it all, but I messed it up. So what can I do to get Chasey's forgiveness and make my family happy again? I am Devlin. I'm 29 years old. I had a happy family with my parents, my older brother Dylan, who's 10 years older than me, and my sister Donna, who's 7 years older than me. My family wasn't rich, especially when Dylan had got lung cancer at the age of 19. We lived in a house where the rent was almost the same as my mom's salary. Plus, the house was really far from the hospital where Dylan was getting treated, so my parents decided to move. We moved to a big house with enough rooms for the 3 of us. The house was old, but the rent was half as much, and it was really close to the hospital. My family was going to start a new life here. We always boosted Dylan up and stayed by his side to help him get through his illness. Unlike my parents, who were happy with the new house, I didn't like its dark and musty atmosphere. Donna was always there to comfort me. She said the musty smell would go away once the house was cleaned and Dad put in more lights. Dylan's illness got worse, so he had to quit school and focus on recovering. My parents took great care of Dylan, and Donna looked after me. Since we moved to the new house, I haven't had a good night's sleep. Every night the sound of glass clinking together echoed. I figured it was coming from Dylan's room since he had to take a lot of medicine. The vibe in the family was a lot quieter, and meals weren't as cheerful as they used to be. I saw Dylan looking tired and pale. My parents were trying to handle the financial issues. I didn't like living in this house. I missed the cozy feel of the old place. One night I heard some noises and woke up. Even though I tried to ignore them, I could still hear footsteps and the sound of wheels rolling on the floor. I opened the door, looked out into the hallway, and felt a chill, even though I was inside the house. Suddenly, A dark figure appeared at the end of the hallway, walked toward Dylan's door, and then just faded away.
Dylan? Is that you?
The echo made me scared of my own voice. Haven't you slept, Devlin? Hearing Dylan's answer, I was relieved and said I needed to use the bathroom and returned to my room. The noises started up again, but there were no more footsteps. I figured Dylan was still awake. One day it was just Dylan and me at home. After lunch, I did the dishes while Dylan went back to his room to rest. After I finished the dishes, I didn't know what to do, so I just sat in the living room and watched TV. Suddenly, a terrible smell filled the room, and I reacted pretty strongly. I walked around the living room and kitchen, but didn't find anything unusual. Dylan must have been asleep, so I didn't want to wake him. I decided to hang on until my mom and Donna came back. I went upstairs and closed the door to get away from that awful smell. I looked for the game console to pass the time, but after almost 20 minutes, I still couldn't find it. I must have left it on the desk. I'm wondering if Dylan borrowed it and forgot to mention it. I lay on the bed with the comic book and vaguely heard a really sad cry. Before I could figure out what was going on, a dark shadow passed by the door and made me jump. When was the door opened? I went out of the room and called Dylan's name, but he didn't answer. I went to Dylan's door and knocked, but there was still no response. I wondered if it was him or not. That night, I told everyone about the weird things I'd seen recently. But no one believed me, and even my mom was really mad. My dad looked at Dylan sadly, lowered his head, and didn't say anything. Donna told my mom to calm down. The noise was because your brother was in pain, which kept him up and made him walk around the house trying to find some relief. But my game console, it was because you didn't clean up your stuff. I've told you about this a bunch of times, right? And the smell in the house, I definitely noticed it. When she heard me say that, my mom slumped down and looked at Dylan. My dad hugged Dylan's shoulders while he bowed his head, pursed his lips, and clenched his fists. I'm sorry, Devlin. I couldn't control my bowel, and it was affecting you. My parents and Dylan all burst into tears. They hugged him tightly to comfort him. At that moment, I just stared at them blankly. My 9-year-old self couldn't really understand everything that was going on. Donna took me back to my room and talked to me a lot. The next day, I met Dylan as I wanted to get closer to him. The mood in the family was happy again, but it wasn't long before Dylan had to be hospitalized. Strangely, even after Dylan wasn't at home anymore, weird things still kept happening. I could only talk to Donna about it, and one day she started feeling the same way I did. One time she saw a figure, missing its left arm and right leg, holding a big gun and staring at her from the corner of the room. We decided to search the house. When I got to the warehouse area, I found a big, old wooden box. Inside were really blurry black and white photos of people sleeping. Donna set the box down and picked up the photos to look at it. They're not just sleeping. These are dead bodies. Donna's words sent a chill down my spine. The book she was reading was the notes of someone who used to work here. During the war, this house was a local morgue. It held lots of bodies of wounded soldiers and innocent civilians. My sister and I didn't get a chance to tell our parents before Dylan had passed away. Losing Dylan nearly broke my mom, and everything in the family was turned upside down. My mom wanted to move back to the old house because it held so many memories of Dylan. Before we left, Donna and I showed our parents the photos in the notebook. My parents invited a priest to come and pray for Dylan's soul and for all the souls in the house. It's been 20 years, and my family hasn't stopped thinking about Dylan for a single day. My name's Francis. I'm 30 years old. 5 years ago, me and my best friend Jeffrey, who shared with me the passion for mountain climbing and adventure, especially the discovery of new and untouched lands, decided that we're going on an adventure together. We're planning to go on a climb to Long Peaks, Colorado. We're planning to go there, and so we're preparing for the trip by arranging our work schedules. After that, we'll be climbing many mountains together for quite some time. The time it normally took for a summit wasn't fixed. There's a lot of variations like weather, terrains, and our own acclimatization. With everything prepped and ready, we're heading to our destination with very high spirit. According to our research, climbing there often took somewhere between 10 to 12 hours for a long trip up and down long peaks. We started our trip early, and at the start, everything was great. At 11 a.m., we're holding out at a rather flat ground to rest and lunch. Jeffrey was planning to have a long break. He wanted to go around for some photographing. Jeffrey was an avid animal lover. He even had an album with him and the wild animals on his treks before. We're still ahead of time, so I gave him the green light. Jeffrey grabbed his camera and started walking around the site. I decided to get a quick rest right there where we stood. The shades from the trees, the smell of fresh grass and earth. I truly loved this place. The sound of the camera snapping pictures echoed more and more quiet in volume now. He must be rather far away now. I did not remember for how long, but when I was dozing off, Jeffrey came to wake me up. He was very excited with the pictures he'd taken, the uniquely picturesque, as he quoted it. The one stood out among those was the picture about the squirrel den. Normally, squirrels made their dens on the tree trunks. However, he claimed to have seen a squirrel den on the ground. I take a closer look at the picture. I could see two overly spooked animals huddling inside a den with two symmetrical openings. The den looked creepier the more I looked at it. So to confirm it wasn't something off, I told him to take me there to the den. He did, after a moment of confusion, happily took me there. When I got there, I decided to clear the scene a bit by flicking out the dirt and a few rotten leaves away. So my feeling was indeed correct. It wasn't a squirrel den, but a dried out human skull. We looked at each other, our spores filled with an unspoken dread. Jeffrey took a step back and heard a loud snap on his heels. He froze in his tracks while I approached closer and cleared out the scene for a better look. Another dried out skeleton, lying on the chest, had just been under Jeffrey's boots. After a quick cleanup, we discovered a total of 4 human skeletal remains, 2 adults and 2 children. Their clothes remained rather intact, with a lot of expensive stuff on their bodies. It must be someone really, really rich. I tried calling the police, but there's no reception. Jeffrey was dumbfounded by the discovery. He kept staring at the skeletons. I thought Jeff was on the verge of a panic attack, so I told him to descend first, getting the police to come. However, he refused, telling me to do that first instead. He'd remain here so the police would not get lost. I hesitated at first, but decided it's the better option. When I returned with 3 police officers, Jeffrey was still there in silence, staring at the skeletons. When the officers told us to cooperate and get our statements, I was willing, while Jeffrey, citing the stress of this discovery and the exhaustion of the trek, declined and immediately headed back to the hotel room. After the investigation, the police announced to me that this was a millionaire family living 300 kilometers away from Long Peaks. They were reported missing for 3 years, and the search was, until this discovery, ongoing. According to the expensive outfits on their skeletal bodies, they were not hiking at the time of death. The police, suspecting it to be a homicide, would continue with the investigation further. Our hiking trip was doomed. We headed home the next day, still haunted by the discovery of what had happened. Jeffrey changed after that incident. He was no longer a joyful person anymore. He became a reserved person. His sight sunk into the ground. He became disinterested in his usual activities. Even I couldn't raise it anymore. His collection of living, joyful living animals replaced by the albums of their death poses. Their final expression was often of pain and fear of their deaths. Jeffrey and I became more and more distant, and eventually he told me that he's going to move back to live with his family. I, for many times, tried to contact him and suggesting on visit, yet every single time he declined. I worriedly told his mother to check on his sudden change of mood and personality. His family also took him to therapy, yet even the best psychiatrists failed to notice anything unusual. After 3 months, he disappeared without a trace. There was no sign of violence or robbery. All of his relationships remained amicable. There was no one who could have thought about harming him. Without a trace, without any evidence, the investigation came to a dead end. However, the family remained steadfast that their son would one day return to them, that their son just pulled a Chris McCandless move on them and would one day return from his adventure. Until one day, they decided to do a renovation of his home. During the excavation process, the family found a body buried in the backyard. Needless to say, Jeffrey's mom was devastated. Her hunch told her clearly that it was her son, who's been missing for the last 2 years. The investigation confirmed it was him. The cause of death was asphyxia, due to airway congestion by burying alive. There was no sign of physical impact. Under the hole where he'd been found, they dug up a shovel, but all fingerprints on it were his. His death still haunted me to this day. Was it a supernatural force that drained him out and buried him under? Or was it a vile secret that he'd literally keep to his grave? I'm David. 7 years ago, I finished my studies at Stanford University, California. I'm stressed thinking about what job I will do and which city to choose to live in. My parents are elderly. They live on pensions in their hometown of Montana. In a few days, I will move out of the school dormitory. I constantly searched for information about cheap apartments on student groups and found a place about 8 kilometers from my dormitory. It is a fairly small 2-story house, including 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor, living room, and kitchen on the 1st floor. This house is being rented by Kevin, 25 years old. He wants to find a roommate and reduce costs because Kevin has a fairly low income as a cashier at a convenience store. When I moved in, I was very surprised with the space and interior of the house. Everything is complete and comfortable, really great compared to the amount of money we rented. When I asked about the landlord, Kevin said he would come check the house quarterly. The rental contract Kevin had already prepared and just needed to sign it. Kevin is a quiet but kind person. Kevin helped me arrange things in the room and told me to let him know if I needed anything. The next days, I sent my resumes everywhere looking for a job. One evening, I stayed up late to talk to my friends about work and upcoming plans. When I accidentally turned around, I was startled and almost dropped the phone when I saw Kevin standing at the door, looking at me with wide eyes. "I've been looking for my phone all night," Kevin answered me in an emotionless whisper. Looking down, I told Kevin in surprise that the phone was in his hand. Kevin slowly looked down at the phone in his hand, then without saying anything more, left for his room. He must be sleepwalking, I think. Another night I was half awake and half dreaming, feeling that the bed was more uneven today. When I moved, I felt like someone was lying next to me. I woke up and saw Kevin lying next to me, in a neat position, his hands on his stomach, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. I jumped up and screamed loudly. I got angry and asked Kevin why he was here. He maintained his lying position, slowly turning his head to look at me. "I'm so scared. It keeps clinging on to me. It wants to eat me." I sighed at the thought of Kevin sleepwalking again and pulled him back to his room and quickly went back to sleep because I had an interview tomorrow. The next morning, I returned home at 11 a.m. after the interview. Hearing a shaky mumbly coming from upstairs, I ran up and saw Kevin sitting huddled in front of the door. Now that I look closely, Kevin is much thinner. His face is haggard and his eyes blackened. Kevin kept muttering incomprehensible things about death. I asked worriedly, but he didn't seem to hear anything. His mouth mumbled faster, his face showing fear and panic. I went to help Kevin up, but he reacted very strongly and pushed my hand away. He said he was out of breath and thirsty. I quickly ran to pour water, but when I returned, Kevin was gone. Pushing open Kevin's room door, I saw him lying on the bed, covered with a blanket. I put the glass of water on the bedside table and went out. Did he go through something terrible? A week later, I was accepted and had a job that matched my qualifications. One late afternoon after coming home from work, I was startled to see a strange man about 60 years old in the house. He was tall and thin, with many strange tattoos on his arms. I was quite impressed with his beard and long hair tied back. It turned out he was the owner of this house. He said he came to inspect the house and end the lease with Kevin. I was very surprised, so Kevin left without saying anything to me. The landlord told me to find more roommates to reduce costs because maybe in the next few months he will increase the rent a bit. The homeowner moved away and I was still thinking about Kevin. He left without taking anything with him, which was strange. About a week later, I was busy with a new job. The post looking for a roommate also received a lot of attention, but I haven't been able to reply to all of them. One night I came home early after 3 consecutive days of overtime. Lying in bed answering messages from a few people interested in the house, I fell asleep without realizing it. I met Kevin, still with the same haggard face, eyes wide open in panic, whispering voice echoing hauntingly. "Oh, there's a rope around my neck. There are too many people here. They all look at me with scary eyes." Suddenly, Kevin let out a loud, shrill, and a painful scream. I jumped up, looked around the room in fear, then quickly reached out and turned on the light. Looking at the clock, it was just after 9 p.m. I calmed down and went down to the kitchen to pour myself a drink. I can't get out of my head thinking about Kevin. I searched every corner of the house with the thinking that this house must have some secret. I don't understand why I did that at that time. As if someone had instructed me, I suddenly remembered Kevin's bedroom. Unexpectedly, my guess was correct. Behind Kevin's bed, there was a door leading down to a place like the basement. I don't know if Kevin had discovered it yet. 40% of me right now is fear. The remaining 60% is curiosity. Holding the baseball bat from Kevin's room, I slowly walked down. I saw the dim light, reached the end of the stairs, and the scene around the basement made me dumbfounded. Many human skeletons and bodies that had not yet fully decomposed were tied tightly to the 4 walls. In the middle of the room was Kevin's body, tied to a wooden post, his face filled with pain and panic. Kevin's neck was tied tightly with a blank stone string, and a talisman was pinned straight to his chest. On the wall behind me were photos of many people. They were all young men. I saw Kevin's photo on it, and in the last photo, pasted in the red circle, is me.
Thank you for watching until the end. As mentioned earlier, our goal of reaching 50,000 subscribers in 2026 is still ongoing. If you enjoy these stories, please give us a hand and support us.